Hello and welcome to a demonstration of the Ansible SDK using one of the example files within inside of the SDK delivery and against what we call Ansible mesh. So some important things to explain here. I'm going to start with a drawing first. We support the Ansible SDK on a Red Hat Enterprise Linux device. So you need to be running RHEL. RHEL 8 is what I've been playing with. RHEL 9 is obviously available. You can do that too. So this is your Python application here. So your Python app is going to call into the SDK. The SDK you can get from GitHub. It's called the Ansible SDK, and you clone that to your machine. Now, the reason why this is a different demonstration to ones you've seen previously is because we have two different routes to be able to execute Ansible jobs. You can either execute them directly against Ansible runner using the Python subprocess. Downside to that, single-threaded and not as scalable as what I'm going to demonstrate now, which is where you can use the receptor-based client to put a job onto the mesh. Now we have limited the mesh to be local only, so you can't go putting jobs onto meshes of clusters infinitely wide. But what it does mean is that you can put a job onto a mesh that is local, and the reason for doing that is because then you can get multiple nodes running on the same machine. So making better use of all of the memory and resources available on that single machine, you can increase the number of nodes on it. So you can see here we've got a controller node called Baz, and then we've got foo and bar as our execution nodes. They will then put the job through Ansible runner that would also be installed locally on that Red Hat Enterprise Linux machine. So just to recap, your app calls into the SDK. The SDK puts the job onto the controller. The controller then chooses a node to scale that to, and then Ansible runner is then executed from that execution node on that same box. All of this is on one machine. We have some really good documentation here, so go to read the docs and set that up, and you can see setting up your local environment. You need to put your nodes in your host file, you need to activate your virtual environment, and then start your different receptor nodes. Finally starting with your controller at the end. We'll test it out. Let's go and do that right now then. So here's a number of different terminal windows. You can see here's foo bar. They're my two nodes, my execution nodes. If I actually just try and see what the status is, there's no status because none of them are running. So let's get the controller, start the nodes first. So and this one, we need bar for this one, I guess. Thought I had it running. Let's see. Okay, we don't. So to run them up, we need to do receptor -config foo and so on. So let's run this one here. So this one could be foo, this one here can be bar, and this one here can be baz. So we've got our two nodes running and our controller node. If we now go back to the top left and try receptor status again, you can now see that they're all running. We've got these two nodes plus the control service, and we're doing work jobs as Ansible. So to test out the actual demonstration, let's see where we are now. We're in examples. Okay, so if we go back to the documentation, it tells you here you can run this example mesh job. So previously in other demonstrations you've probably been seeing, what was it, subprocess. So this is the guy I was talking about earlier, where you can run it single-threaded through Python as a subprocess. There you go, where you have to own all of the scaling inside of your Python app, and it's going to be quite hard to do. If you want receptor and mesh to handle all of the scale, then you can do it this way. So Python example mesh job, run that. And you can see now that the nodes are going to start receiving. So bottom left hand nodes receive some of the jobs, top right hand nodes receiving some of the other jobs, and bottom right is obviously doing the control here. You can see here all the top left is giving us the playbook output, and it's done, and that's it. So the example is the example. It's running a playbook that goes and pings a bunch of local machines. Nothing clever, but it does prove how you can scale a playbook execution inside of your Python application across multiple receptor mesh nodes. So that really concludes the demonstration. we're not going to go through the code here. We'll do a code route walkthrough on another video, but hopefully that gives you some confidence to be able to go forth with Ansible SDK, knowing that you can use the Ansible mesh to scale out your jobs on the same Red Hat Enterprise Linux machine.